Вітаю, і прийшов час спростувати нову
Greetings. It is time to refute a new series of fakes produced by the aggressor state. Let's start with the official statements by the Russian authorities that Ukraine allegedly stands behind the anti-Semitic riots in Dagestan. These allegations come from the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The key role in the incident at Makhachkala airport was played by the Kyiv regime. That's what the media in Russia writes. The same narrative is being spread by Russian Telegram channels. Pogroms at Makhachkala airport are the result of a planned provocation by the special services of Ukraine. This is a quote from the War on Fakes channel.
пішов ще далі і сказав, що це було зроблено.
Meanwhile, Russian military propagandists Podolyak went further and said that this was done not just by Ukraine, but together with Washington. Quote, familiar narratives, this is exactly how the people in Maidan in Kyiv behaved. So, is there anyone who doesn't believe that the mob in Makhachkala is a weapon in the hands of Washington? What happened is an evidence of the collapse and internal impotence of the team that rules Russia and shows that the anti-Semitism that they broadcast, including insults towards the Ukrainian political leadership, has found its continuation. It has found support in the actions of their own Russian citizens who committed these actions, which are barbaric in the 21st century. And the meetings with Hamas representatives that took place in Moscow only added to the enthusiasm of these protesters who were breaking into Makhachkala airport and trying to carry out filtration measures. An absolutely outrageous example of anti-Semitism. And of course, this required reaction from the civilized world. Russia's repressive apparatus can only fight the enemies of the Putin regime, but is unable to respond adequately to the challenges that arise from the actions of the regime itself. The actions of the Russian propagandists are also absurd and outrageousness. They call on all those involved in the events in Makhachkala to go to the territory of Ukraine and wash away their transgression with blood. Meanwhile, what did the head of Dagestan Melikov say? He suggested that those detained at Makhachkala airport should go to the so-called special military operation to, quote, wash off their shame. The State Duma deputy also suggested creating a new battalion and sending them to the special military operation on the territory of Ukraine. What does this mean? That participation in the war on the territory of Ukraine for Russians is not an international duty or denazification, but a punishment, meaning that those who, in the understanding of Russian regimes, have done something wrong, those people must prove their loyalty to Putin by going to the battlefield and being killed or injured as a result of the aggressive war that they are waging on the territory of Ukraine. Meanwhile, Russian propaganda is trying to use its traditional measures, accusing Ukraine of what they themselves do. In particular, Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Zakharova, the person who is authorized to broadcast the official position on behalf of the Russian state to the whole world, accuses Ukraine, as she claims, of nuclear terrorism. What does this indicate? They are simply trying to diminish their own nuclear terrorism at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant by accusing Ukraine of it. Of course, no one believes in these accusations, but their broadcast and systemic nature shows that they have no other arguments left to justify their actions. Similarly absurd are the statements by the defense minister Shoigu of the aggressor state at the Security Forum in Beijing that the war on Ukrainian territory was started not by Russia, but by some third force. The West has openly set a course to inflict a strategic defeat on Russia in the hybrid war unleashed against Russia, Shoigu states. But it is worth recalling that it was Russian troops who came with occupation intentions on Ukrainian territory, whereas Ukraine has never committed any encroachments on Russia's territorial integrity. In the meantime, we can see new absolutely absurd fakes in Telegram channels of the so-called war correspondents of the aggressor state. In particular, the channel of Richard Wagner, with reference to his war correspondent Svistunov, claims absolute nonsense, quote, according to my source in Zelensky's entourage, the General Valery Zaluzhny, commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, has been arrested and is under house arrest with a ban on accessing the internet. This is what they seriously stated. Of course, this has nothing to do with reality. General is fulfilling his authority, and Russian propagandists cannot have any sources in the entourage of the president of Ukraine. Another fake from from Putin's Telegram channel says, "The security service of Ukraine is coming for those who don't like Zelensky. This is absolutely nonsense in order to spread the narrative among the Russian population that supposedly there is some kind of struggle for dissent in Ukraine. However, in reality, Ukraine actually has a democracy that even some countries of the European Union can envy, and it is impossible to live without commenting another wave of anti-human narratives by the Russian propagandist Skabeyeva, which justified the Russian missile that hit the warehouse and terminal of the Nova Poshta, that is New Post, in Kharkiv. She said that allegedly there were guns and weapons hidden in the post office, and thus the strike seemed to be legitimate. This is no different from the actions of terrorists. So, of course, the propagandist must be punished for such words along with all military and other political criminals after the end of the war. And we conclude the briefing with a refutation of a fake published by the Russian state agency RIA Novosti with a reference to Russia's propagandist with an American surname, as they present him so-called former US military intelligence officer Scott Ritter. In fact, this person was convicted and served a sentence for the crimes of pedophilia, and he is a regular commentator on channels like Russia Today. Scott Ritter claims that Russia teared down the Ukrainian armed forces and, in particular, quote, ultra-precise Russian air defense equipment destroyed the Ukrainian armed forces aviation. Here we can only recall that we have been hearing such statements for over a year and a half. And in March 2022, in the first months of the war, Minister Shoigu also said that the army of Ukraine suffered significant damage. We entire destroyed air force and air defense. Of course, Russia is waging an aggressive war on the territory of Ukraine, but to somehow justify it, they always announce some non-existent military gains and victories and tell obvious lies. My traditional appeal: do not trust the aggressor state and their propagandists. Trust Ukrainian official sources, Ukrainian military and political leadership. If you live outside of Ukraine, watch the Russian language channel Freedom or in English UATV.
До зустрічі!